Disclaimer: content in this video has been created strictly for educational and investigational purposes. There is no intention to glamorise or endorse criminality or any aspect of crime. The information in this video has been acquired online from publicly available sources. From its opening in 1975 to its shutdown in 2023, this jail has got some stories to tell. But how did a prison meant to reform turn into a nightmare? It's 1975. And Scotland's got a problem. The number of women getting locked up is climbing, and there's no proper place to put them. The SPS decide to build HMP Cornton Vale in Stirling, which is a national hub for lady prisoners. Lady Martha Bruce, the first governor, takes the helm, overseeing a complex with 217 cells across 5 blocks. The plan? To centralise convicted women and YOs, give them structure and maybe a chance to turn things round. By 1978, new laws let remand prisoners in and all, so it's meant to be a fresh start, a place to punish and rehabilitate. Former Lord Advocate Eilish Angelini later said prisons exist to punish and rehabilitate, but too often when women are in prison for low-level offences, it does mean to punish the families left on the outside. I can't help but agree. But was Cornton Vale ever fit for purpose? I think you realise where I go with these, eh? When Cornton Vale opened, it was a bold move. You had 4 blocks with 178 spots, right? Each split into wee units with dining rooms and kitchens, plus a 5th block for the YOs. The idea was to create a community feel, not just a cage. In 2004, they even tried letting Waynes up to stay with their ma's, and this was an approach to try and keep families together. But cracks started to show quite early. By the 1990s, shock horror, the jail was bulging. 340 inmates in 2004 against a capacity of 230. Clive Fairweather, Chief Inspector in 1999, begged for the population to be cut to 100, said it wasn't right for women with mental health and addiction issues. But was this only the start of the trouble? Overcrowding led to really grim conditions. You had 2 hour waits for the toilet, cold scran, and boredom that would crush your soul. Brigadier Hugh Monroe, who was the Chief Inspector in 2010, called it a state of crisis, saying the atmosphere of boredom in the prison created an environment that lent itself to re-offending. Violence was rampant. Between 2006 and 2011, the jail racked up 489 assaults and 664 fights, higher per prisoner than even Barrel. James Kelly, Scottish Labour's Shadow Justice Minister, said, "These are worrying statistics, and it's important to understand what lies behind the level of reported assaults. Women, often damaged by trauma or addiction, turn to violence as a way of life." Bill White, a criminal justice expert, put it bluntly, prisoners at Cornton Vale tend to be the most damaged individuals in prison or elsewhere, and for some of them, violence is a lifelong means of communication. But the violence wasn't the worst of it. You see, Cornton Vale's darkest stain was its suicide rate. Between 1995 and 2002, 11 women took their own lives. 8 by hanging from 1995 to 1998 alone. 2 died in a single week in 2001. The 2012 Angelini Commission report painted a grim picture. Cornton Vale is a miserable place with conditions antediluvian and appalling. By the way, antediluvian basically means prehistoric. Fucking snob. In 2019, inspectors found women in desperate need of psychiatric care. 1 woman bit through her arm to the bone. Another one set her hair on fire. Stephanie Ritchie, a former prisoner, told STV News the conditions at Cornton Vale were terrible. "I remember the building was sinking and we were lying in our beds and you could smell the sewage. It was disgusting. We were treated like animals." The governor in 2006 admitted, "I'm shocked by the high numbers of mentally ill people we need to deal with." But the scandals kept coming. Escapes and breaches made headlines. In 2014, Amy Stewart, jailed for a murder, did a runner after a week-long licence and never returned. Kaylee Murray, convicted of killing a man with 1 punch, was let out for a date with her jailbird fiancé in 2016. As you can imagine, the public kicked off. Kim Gray, that stabbed a taxi driver, got a day trip to watch 50 Shades of Grey in 2015. Apparently her victim was raging about it. He said, "I'm absolutely disgusted." Probably the biggest scandal in Scottish prison history hit Cornton Vale, and it wasn't a riot, hostage taking, or a grand escape. It was 2 words: Isla Bryson. In 2023, Cornton Vale hit the news when trans rapist Isla Bryson was papped there. It kicked off massively. There was protests outside the jail, with Rape Crisis Scotland tweeting it is not appropriate for somebody convicted of any serious sexual offence to be placed within the general female population. Nicola Sturgeon stepped in, saying Bryson wouldn't stay at Cornton Vale either short term or long term. Days after being sent to Cornton Vale, Bryson was carted off to HMP Stirling. On the guys' wing, the move came after a court warrant pushing for HMP Stirling, a men's prison, was ignored by the SPS, which had people saying that the order to send Bryson to Cornton Vale must have came from the highest level. And this didn't just get brushed under the carpet. It actually lit a fuse under the whole debate about trans prisoners and gender self-ID policies. By February 28, 2023, Bryson got an 8-year sentence for the rapes and a 3 year of supervision post-release and a lifelong spot in the sex offenders register. Get it up, ye. Lord Scott, the judge, told Bryson, "You see yourself as the victim in this case, but you're no," pointing out his high risk of re-offending and his targeting of vulnerable women. The trial heard Bryson, who transitioned whilst awaiting trial, claimed he'd known he was trans since aged 4, but his estranged wife, Shona Graham, called it a sham for attention to dodge a guy's jail. The SPS, still scun up for the scandal, rolled out a new policy saying trans prisoners would be housed based on their birth sex until a case-by-case assessment deemed otherwise. This was a direct fallout for Bryson's case, with the SPS review claiming he'd no contact with other prisoners at Cornton Vale and posed no risk there, although they kept the full report under wraps, citing personal details. People like Russell Finlay weren't having it, demanding that the report be published to clear up why a double rapist ever set foot in a woman's jail. By 2024, Bryson was still stirring the pot for inside HMP Stirling, whinging about being misgendered by the prison staff and claiming to be a victim of transphobia. He wrote to the Sunday Mail, moaning about a female screw calling him son and the lack of female toiletries, even bragging about relationships with other cons, including a convicted nonce. Former Cornton Vale Governor Rona Hotchkiss laughed off Bryson's hate crime claims, saying misgendering wasn't a crime, and pointing to Hamza Yusuf's own words that Bryson was quote-unquote at it. Apparently, a leaked document for Police Scotland for October 2024 showed that they actually considered recording Bryson as a female in the sex offenders register, but Chief Constable Joe Farrell shut it down, saying that rape is a crime only a man can commit under Scots law. So in the end, Bryson's case didn't just shift prison policy, it became a lightning rod for the gender reform debate. Nicola Sturgeon's self-ID bill, already in shaky ground, took a bit of a battering. You had people like Douglas Ross and women's rights groups hammering home the risks of opportunistic transitions. Bryson is still in the jail, serving his time in a man's prison. But the ripple for his case keeps churning, with people like Finlay warning they'll be back in the street by 2027. It's a prospect no much comfort to the victims. The whole mess left a big mark, exposing cracks in the system and fueling a fierce debate that's still going on. But it was long before this scandal that Cornton Vale had started to show cracks. In 2012, the Angelini report demanded Cornton Vale be demolished, calling for a smaller jail and regional units. They had plans for HMP Inverclyde, but they fell to the wayside, and instead HMP in YY Stirling was built next door for $85 million. That opened in July 2023. Cornton Vale shut its doors in April 2023 and its inmates moved to Stirling's trauma-informed setup. Theresa Medhurst, the SPF Chief Executive, said, "This is significant development. It will help give women in our care the best possible chance of a successful rehabilitation." But people like Natalie Logan, shout out Natalie, for Cisco, warned that community through care is missing. There is a lack of communication between establishments and the community. HMP Stirling was plopped in the same site with a mission to fix the mess. The plan was an £85.7 million women's national facility that's smaller, sleeker, and all about healing rather than punishing. It's got room for just 100 lasses compared to the Cornton Vale's 400 plus, and it's designed with a trauma-informed vibe. No bars and windies, no cell doors, just a campus-style setup with views of Stirling Castle and the Ochil Hills. When I say no cell doors, I mean no clanky, bangy cell doors. Not too bad, eh? But here's the thing. This shiny new jail, right, was meant to be open in 2020, but it got kind of delayed because of the pandemic. with costs for bricks and mortar shooting up, right? So by the time it finally opened in 2023, it was 2 years late and 7 million quid over budget. The Tories, of course, were having kittens. Russell Finlay started greeting that the SNP aren't interested in justice and taxpayers were left holding the bill. But the SPS were buzzing and you had Chief Theresa Medhurst boasting it unlocked potential and transformed lives. It took yous long enough. But would this fancy jail live up to the hype? Or was it just a pricey pipe dream? So HMP Stirling's got this big idea, right? To stop the revolving door of crime by focusing on the lassie's mental health and past traumas. Brilliant, I'm all for it. Most women in the nick have had a rough go. 98% at Cornton Vale had addiction issues. 80% had mental health struggles. And 75% were survivors of abuse. Stirling's meant to be different. It's got a mother and baby unit, an enhanced mental health area, and a separation and reintegration unit for the trickier cases. The SPS's Alistair Purdy was over the moon, telling BBC Scotland our staff can now focus on individual needs, wanting to break that cycle of offending. It's got like wee hussies called Primrose, Bluebell and Thistle, with shared kitchen and gardens, making it feel less like a jail and more like a therapeutic retreat. Early signs were promising. Justice Secretary Angela Constance called it world leading, saying that a smaller setup and mental health support would slash the offending rates. The design by Holmes Miller, a bit of alright, with big windies and views to calm the soul. It took inspiration for ideas for the posh Scandinavian jails. But here's the thing, right? It's only been open since 2023, so hard numbers on rehabilitation, they're a bit sketchy. The SPS claimed they're transforming lives. But with no long-term data, some people just think it's too soon to be calling it a win and going up the road, know what I mean? But there was also some people that weren't that happy about the opening of HMP Stirling. And that was the neighbours. Locals in Forth Park and Vale Grove, living right next to the jail, were going after their nut. They were moaning about screaming, shouting, swearing and banging for the jail at all hours. It turns out the separation and reintegration unit, where the most mental and violent lasses are kept, was built right next to a housing estate. According to HM Inspector Wendy Sinclair Gibbon, it was a quote-unquote major design flaw. That's one way to put it. People were shutting their windows and wearing noise-cancelling headphones to cope with the racket. Somebody told the BBC, my two Waynes shouldn't be hearing all that foul language and aggro. MSP Alexander Stewart was raging, writing to Angela Constance to sort it out. The SPS promised to fix it, but the papers lapped it up, with headlines like £85 million super jails, noisy nightmare. It's a lot of money to spend on a shite sleep, innit? Whilst HMP Stirling's grabbing the headlines, something a bit quieter's happening during Glasgow at the Lilias Centre, one of Scotland's first community custody units. So this was opened in 2022, alongside the Bella Centre in Dundee. The Lilias Centre is a game changer for low-risk women nearing release. It's just like a wee unit with 24 beds. It's designed to feel more like a house rather than a jail, and it's got shared living spaces and no bars. The SPS's strategy for women in custody, launched in 2022, says it's all about building relationships and preparing women for life outside. Theresa Medhurst told the Daily Record, these CCUs give women the best possible chance at a safe return to their communities. Unlike Cornton Vale's dodgy, overcrowded cells, or even Stirling's posh but still secure setup, Lillias is about freedom with guardrails. Lassies get to cook their own scran, manage their own schedules, and work with social workers to sort out jobs or housing. It's mainly built for women that have experienced trauma, which is near enough all of them. It takes ideas from places like New Zealand and Canada. Keith Brown, then Justice Secretary, bragged to the SPS website that the CCUs are a step change in how Scotland supports women in custody. Early signs are good. The SPS say women leaving Lillias are less likely to re-offend, although again, it's a bit too soon, unless you've got the stats. But there's a catch. Back to Natalie Logan again, shout out Natalie. Told STV News, having these new places is great, but how do we have enough support outside to keep these women on track? You see, if the community can't catch them in the route, will Lillias just be a nice holiday before they're back in the nick? And what's next for Scotland's prison system? From suicides to scandals, the true cost of locking up Scotland's most broken women. As Bill White said, we are failing these women and we're failing the community. Now, with Stirling taking air, there is hope for change, but will it break the cycle, or is it just another chapter in a never-ending story? There has been a lot less women's prisons built in Scotland, Well, history is just as interesting. One recurring theme is a battle between the prisoners and the SPS, a custodial tug-of-war all throughout history. But the SPS aren't the only corporation that runs Scottish jails. Next up, we're looking at 2 jails in Scotland that are run by private organisations. Well, at least one of them are now. Each have got their own stories of chaos and criminality, inhabited by some of the tastiest characters in the prison system. The first of its kind, we're going to head down to Bohus and tell the story of HMP Cornton. If you want to view this episode in its entirety, then head on over to the Patreon and sign up to the Patter Pro tier. For a small one-off payment, you can watch the full history of the Scottish Prison System podcast.